Although known for its rich culture, historic buildings and beautiful beaches, Mazatlan, being located in the Sinaloa estate, is also known for drug trading and those cartels. During our cruise in August 2023, many of our passengers that we dined with warned us off exploring this port on our own. They really did start to have us questioning our safety. To be honest, after watching a little bit too much Queen of the South, we did actually have our hesitations. However, throwing caution to the wind, we decided that we would explore this port on our own. And boy, are we glad we actually did. We got to see lots of different sights, ate some delicious food, and best of all, we saved lots of dollars. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you what we actually saw, how we got around, and what our day cost us during this 9-hour port stop in Mazatlan. The first thing to know about arriving in Mazatlan is that it is actually a working port and you can't just walk off the ship into the tourist area. So after debarking, there's a free tram that takes you from just outside the ship into where the port exit gates are. Mazatlan really has things sorted for tourists when it comes to getting from the port into the city centre. One of the things that we chose to do was to follow the blue line. Now they very kindly provide a blue line that is literally a blue line painted on the ground from directly outside the port gates right to the area where the old town is located. When you exit the main gate, it's straight across the road, and if you somehow miss the big blue line that just so happens to be on the ground, there are multiple signs along the walk pointing you in the right direction as well. You can find a map of the blue line and how you get from the port into the old town on the internet, and I downloaded this before we headed off. But in all honesty, I didn't actually need to use the map because the blue line was so easy to follow. It was a real opportunity to reenact Dorothy walking along the yellow brick road, but instead of that yellow brick road, we had that blue line. And instead of having lions and 10 men appear, you're more likely to come across pickpockets and cartel members. Rest assured though, we experienced neither and felt completely safe along the entire walk. I have to say, safety concerns were really easily forgotten as we walked along that blue line, as we passed multiple police officers every 100 metres or so. It is a reasonably easy flat walk, and even with the really high humidity, it only took about 25 minutes to get into the old town. The blue line stops just prior to the old town, but with a little help of Google Maps or an alternative mapping app, it was actually really easy to navigate the really short walk from where that blue line ends to the main square. It was basically a couple of minutes further on. I have to say, by the time we arrived in Republica Square, we had sweat in places one should never have sweat, but it was absolutely worth it to see some of the beautifully coloured buildings along the walk. I'm so glad that we opted to walk the blue line instead of the option of an Uber, even though they were really quite cheap from the port, as if we had have grabbed an Uber, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to see all of these buildings. I did look at the price of an Uber before we headed out, and it was around 45 pesos that time in the morning. Republica Square is clearly an area enjoyed by the locals, as well as an area for tourists to visit. Right opposite Republica Square is the Basilica Mazatlan. Sorry for any pronunciation that might be wrong. Although we aren't religious, I do enjoy the beauty of architecture of churches, and I generally pop them onto our itinerary. Simon tends to call them the ABC, another bloody church, but he still comes in anyway. I have to admit that the inside of this church was actually quite beautiful, and I even think Simon enjoyed this ABC as it offered a brief reprieve from the heat outside. A short walk from the cathedral brings you to the Mercardo, the central markets. I really enjoyed our wander through these markets, as it's always interesting to see where the locals go and what they buy while they're there. There's multiple food vendors around the outside of the building, and although I desperately wanted to buy some birria tacos, it was just way too hot to stand outside eating them. The interior of the markets are very similar to markets that you would experience in Vietnam or Hong Kong, with a range of goods and foods available. And just like those Asian markets, the vendors ask you what you're looking for as you're walking past, and they try to get you to taste their goods. A simple no thank you, and we were generally left alone. From the Mercardo, we walked towards Calle Flores. Again, sorry if the pronunciation isn't correct. This street is well known for its beautifully painted coloured houses and is an attraction that I noticed was on many of the ship shore excursions. It just so happened that as we were walking along this street, multiple double-decker tour buses were driving past us. And the problem for the cruisers on these tours was that the passengers that were sitting on the bottom level of these buses would have had absolutely no view of the homes, as the homes were actually elevated on an embankment. I imagine that there would have been lots of complaints, or AKA mooing, from the buses. I have to say, it was really good to be able to take our time and enjoy the beauty of this area without the constraints of being on a tour and missing the opportunity to take in the area. From the houses, it was a really short and easy walk to the Malecon, the boardwalk area along the seafront. It had taken us about 2 hours from leaving the ship to get to the Malecon via the old town. And not far from where we came onto the Malecon are the famous cliff divers. The divers don't actually dive off a cliff, but rather it's a 15-metre platform, and then they come around asking for money from the people who are watching them. Now, 15 metres is still really high, and they seriously are taking their life into their own hands jumping off there. What makes this absolutely insane is that they jump directly into an area where the constant waves are smashing onto the rocks along the shore. We didn't get close enough to pay to watch them, but we did manage to see some jumping from afar. Directly across from the cliff divers is the Devil's Gate. Although somewhat debatable, this is apparently a famous landmark and one of the most visited tourist attractions in Mazatlan. They say many legends have been shared over the years, and the stories of entering and never coming out may be why there's actually a locked gate on there with a devil adorning that gate. Within this same area is Callejon Liverpool, a small area with a very British theme. This was the perfect spot for Simon to relive his British heritage. There's statues depicting Beatles' Abbey Road album cover, there's a yellow submarine and a few other token British themed photo ops. The area was clearly very popular with the tourists as we waited for tourist after tourist to pose with the Beatles statues before we could get a photo without anybody else in it. Although there are several different places to eat in this area, we walked back to the market area in search of some food and somewhere to escape the heat. Having not seen any public toilets through our entire walk, a tip for travellers is just prior to the markets there's a department store called Liverpool. Now, this isn't to be confused with the area near the Malecon, but rather it's a very modern department store that's in the old town. On the 3rd floor there's some absolutely lovely, clean, free toilets. There are many different places to pick up snacks and meals in this area. We actually opted to pick up a snack from a bakery and sit in the shade of Republica Square alongside the locals. We decided that we would head back to the port area for a late lunch. I have to say the walk back along the Blue Line took us slightly longer than when we'd headed out in the morning, as the heat had just gotten so much hotter. If you are visiting Mazatlan and going to do the Blue Line, I really recommend an early start if you arrive in port early. Inside the port gates there's the customary Mexican tourist traps with souvenirs, tequila and those pharmacies that sell goodness knows what. There are multiple places to eat and drink within that gated area, though I'd strongly recommend walking into the old town. If you just wanted to stay in the port area, you'd still be able to experience some of the authentic food. I'd say the meals in this port area are probably more expensive than the ones in the old town, but in reality they were still ridiculously cheap in comparison to food back in Australia. We ended up having chicken tacos and the mandatory local beer Pacifico for around $15. As I shared, we saw quite a bit of Mazatlan. We got to see the historic centre, the Malecon and the boardwalk, a little bit of England, and those beautiful coloured houses. Now I guess the question is, did we feel safe? And I have to say we absolutely felt safe as we were walking not only the Blue Line but in the areas between the historic centre and the Malecon. Just like we would in any country, we were just aware of our surroundings and the people around us, but it was no different to how we would actually be when we're back home in Australia. And as you can see, we managed to not get robbed, we're still alive, and we weren't taken by the cartel. All in all, we had a really great day in Mazatlan. The only thing that wasn't quite enjoyable was the heat and the humidity, but regardless of whether you're doing it on your own or a ship tour, you're going to come across that. So I guess the next question is, how much did we actually spend? We didn't pay anything for any entrance fees because we didn't go into anything that cost money. We bought food and drinks, and all up we didn't spend any more than $25 for the entire day. We did stop and buy a few bottles of water as we were walking because it was really, really hot. So for $25 for 2 people, we had a great day, saw a bit, and I have to say we saw more of those coloured houses than the ship's tour that was going past on the bus. Now, if you're interested in seeing any of our other do-it-by-yourself port tours, check out one of our other videos above, or feel free to subscribe so that you're notified when we upload another video. Thanks for watching, and again, thank you for supporting our channel.